إلى أهالي العسكري وللأهالي الذين صمتوا عن أولادهم وتركوهم في خدمة النظام حتى الآن ولم يدفعوهم للانشقاق عنه أو لم يسارعوا إلى استدعاء أولادهم من ثكناتهم العسكرية بأي وسيلة، نعدهم بأننا سنقوم بتعميم أسمائهم على عناصر الجيش الحر بكل المناطق والعمل على تصفيتهم وعدم قبول أي عذر من الأعذار. وكل من يثبت لدينا أنه يرسل ولده إلى الخدمة العسكرية لدى النظام سيكون مصيره مصير ولده. عاشت سوريا حرة أبية والنصر ثورتنا المباركة. تكبير الله أكبر، تكبير الله أكبر، تكبير.
As the conflict in Syria continues, Christians are fleeing that country in fear of militant extremists who are targeting minority, ethnic, and religious communities. John Pontifex, who is head of press and information for Aid to the Church in Need, spoke with Anne Schneibel about the growing humanitarian and pastoral concerns for Syrian Christians.
The first thing to say is that it's very difficult to elicit from Syria a clear picture as to the nature of the problem and the nature of how things are changing with regard to that problem. But what we do know is that there is a range of factors at work which are making it very difficult for minority groups. As part of the mix of different militant groups at work in the region now, we are seeing a systematic assault on minority groups, and a lot of this is organized along ethnic lines, but particularly religious lines, and the Christians would seem to be in the line of fire. I was in touch with a woman who herself had family in Syria, and they were reporting to her the situation as they experienced it on the ground just outside Damascus. And they were saying that the extremists were walking through the streets and were making it clear that Christians should either leave or face being killed.
Well, Turkey's basically the vanguard of NATO. NATO's just agreed to put Patriot missiles up there, hasn't it?
This in itself is a huge development as far as the conflict in Syria goes, because it shows there's a plan, if you could say, there's a plan to put a no-fly zone over the northern part of Syria, and this for Syria is a huge blow for the Syrian government, because I don't know whether they can counter this in any way, because as it currently goes, the insurgency is quite powerful in a sense, because they're flooding from like a whole various different borders. But this development to say there's going to be a potential no-fly zone, we'll see a rise in insurgent activity from Turkey on the northern side of Syria, and you can say this could be the same as far as the Golan Heights go on the Israeli border.
The Turkish foreign minister has actually been in Gaza today. What is he doing there?
Well, firstly, it's it's part of this whole image for Turkey to be viewed as the mediator, the saviors of the Palestinian people, because this whole incident is you can say they're playing politics, cause emotional incident where he's crying over his dead body and the father, and this, it's getting into emotional politics, as I say, because the support, it links back to Syria, because you can say they're losing support domestically but and Ak Party and Erdogan, they're trying to raise their support. So with this whole Gaza incident and the visit by Davutoglu, because it's not a regular occurrence for any high-ranking politician to visit Gaza Strip. They speak about it in Turkish politics constantly, because it's one of those soft points, and to be against Israel and to support the Palestinians in the Turkish public, it's seen as a very positive thing.
I guess, Turkey's just lent Egypt billions of dollars. I guess they'd like to do the same for Hamas, and probably they're being refused the chance.
Yeah, I suppose so, but the whole confusion with Hamas is their split in regards to Syria, because they done that U-turn where they're supporting the insurgency there. So there's a clear link between the Turkish government and Hamas, but as far as what's going on behind closed doors, I can't exactly say what's going on. But you can definitely say the politics is at play.
Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Tuesday, November 27th, 2012, and I'm Darko. I'm just going to give you these titles of these videos that we just went over briefly, and you go in YouTube's video description and you can watch the full length of all of them. Free Syrian army terrorists threaten parents of Syrian army troops with death, followed by the same terrorists giving Friday sermons in full jihad in Aleppo, Syria. This blowing up of this mosque here was Free Syrian terrorists blowing up mosques to accuse the Syrian army of doing it. So very sneaky, followed by Christians flee Syria in wake of targeted violence. So it's not just Christians, it's other sects of Islam. Turkey acting in tandem with Israel. So at least that's what they say in the public, right? Is Turkey is no longer Israel's pal in the Middle East. But the truth is that Turkey is acting in tandem with Israel. But this is the notion that they like to put out. Prime Minister Erdogan has helped turn his country towards Islam and against its former ally. So again, it's like Egypt. These are controlled opposition puppets. They're talking about the denunciation of Israel as a terrorist state by Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan. And when I heard that, I was just like, yeah, I kind of rolled my eyes, One quick point before we move forward here is I thought it was interesting that I wasn't even aware of this, that Turkey had given a bunch of money to Egypt. Remember, I just talked about how the IMF and World Bank and that. I'm not sure who else loaned them money, but they had like two different sources that loaned them millions, if not billions of dollars before this whole thing happened with Egypt. So you can be rest assured that what's happening in Egypt was planned following this whole attack by Israel on Gaza. And of course, it was also planned with what? With Qatar, the Emir of Qatar, pumping in millions of dollars into Gaza. Also, what? Intimidation in Syria for pro-Palestinians. So what they were talking about with Hamas being split all of a sudden, taking a U-turn, what was he referring to? Well, he's referring to the fact that Qatar, a very, very wealthy entity or state, was just basically heading up the whole Syrian regime change operation, funneling lots of money into that. They're trying to form a new government to give these Islamists more representation. And while at the same time they're supposedly funding anti-Israel operations with Hamas in Palestine. So I would imagine that the ones that are anti-current Syria government or Syria regime in Palestine are the ones that are taking the cash from the Emir who's supporting the regime change in Syria. All right, another point that I made while this all was going on with Palestine or Gaza Strip and Israel before Thanksgiving break there was what? Is that it was basically deflecting attention from what was going on in Syria. I said huge gains. Someone else said, no, that's not true. But either way, it says Israel-Gaza charade concludes, West pivots back to Syria. As predicted, Israel accepts humiliating ceasefire to bolster partners in Syria's subversion, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. Reuters reported in their article, jubilant Palestinians mob Gaza streets regarding the ceasefire brokered by Egypt. That agreement calls on Hamas and Israel to cease all forms of military activity. So, pretty interesting that Egypt all of a sudden came out, because in the radio, there were Western media, they were all on Israel's side, but they were also saying, everybody forgot about a big power player, Egypt, and they sound very intelligent. They sound like they know what they're talking about. The only problem is that this whole thing was engineered, right? Brokered by Egypt. Egypt gets to be this rising power in the region, right? After they just took a bunch of cash from the global government. So, this is all step-by-step planned. Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, in fact, are all partners with Israel and its Western sponsors in the subversion and overthrow of Syria, now have a renewed popular mandate across the Arab world as a direct result of Israel's premeditated, predictable failure in Gaza. So the whole thing about Barak, the defense minister of Israel, stepping down, and Hamas saying, see, that's a proof of failure, and then also Hamas supporting the Palestinian recognition of statehood by the United Nations. Again, Hamas is controlled opposition, so it says Western pundits and policymakers are already gloating over the ceasefire. Says it's already being spun into a narrative regarding the new Middle East. I keep seeing that too. That's something I noticed, was calling it a new Middle East. It says the Brookings Institute's Doha Center director tweeted that the ceasefire deal handed particular Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar credit for both the support for Gaza and the cessation of hostilities. Talking about a no-fly zone, it looks like it's finally coming to fruition, and it says here, deployment of Patriots missiles in Turkey means no-fly zone for Syria. The planned deployment of NATO countries of Patriot air defense systems on Turkey-Syria's border will actually amount to an imposition of a no-fly zone for Syrian aircraft in circumvention of the UN Security Council. But Turkey is saying that the Patriot missiles won't be used for Syria's no-fly zone, and insists the move counters missile threat from Syria. Their officials are seeking to placate growing opposition to the request for the Patriot missiles from other NATO member nations to deploy around the Syrian border, insisting that they will not be used to establish a no-fly zone inside Syria airspace. And just after the new opposition government was formed, like I said, allowing more extremist representation in the government, it says NATO Allied Land Command activating next week in Turkey. Remember, I talked about how the Pentagon was mulling 40,000 troops if they were going to send troops on the ground, 40,000 troops for Syrian invasion. Also, you have England, Britain, after the whole Qatar plan and all that was signed, coming out strong after the elections too. In America, coming out strong, saying, "Oh yeah, we'll be imposing the RAF, will be imposing a no-fly zone, and we'll also be flying SAS troops there as well." So they definitely have plans. They were just waiting until after the elections to carry out this, like what Land Destroyer referred to as Charade. New NATO Land Command headquarters says it will be activated next week in Turkey as a new home for planning how infantrymen from the 28-nation alliance fight together. So, I mean, this is going to be a big military hub. They're talking about interoperability. See that fast a lot of times. They're talking about basically NATO powers all working in unison as one government, basically every individual government losing their sovereignty, and that's what part of becoming NATO is. And that's why, Turkey wants to become part of the EU, so they'll do whatever they got to do, at least the Turkish politicians. But their population is what? They're not really pro-Israel at all, which is why you have Erdogan going on there saying Israel's a terrorist state. When in fact he's serving their interests and the Western's interests as well. And they're part of NATO. So, the United States is big pro-Israel and Turkey's big pro-Israel. So most of you have probably figured out by now, unless you've been completely tuned out to alternative media, U.S. created Syrian opposition led by big oil representative, as in Libya. The Syrian opposition is led by longtime servants of Western corporate financiers. Yeah, actually, a year ago, it was reported that Libya's new NATO-installed prime minister was in fact a longtime U.S. resident, taught at the University of Alabama, and employed by the Petroleum Institute based in the United Arab Emirates. It says now it's revealed that the U.S. hand-picked opposition announced in Doha, Qatar earlier this month is led by a similar compromised figure. After setting up shop in Cairo, they received full endorsement of France, Italy, UK, Turkey, the Gulf states, the EU, and the U.S. Thank you.